A doctor so obsessed with his patient that he removed her corpse from her grave, preserved it for years, and slept beside it every night. This isn't fiction. It's the shocking reality of Carl Tanzler, whose love for Elena Hoyos crossed into a realm of psychological horror that still captivates and unsettles us today. What if a dream could convince you that you'd found your soulmate? Carl von Cosel, a German doctor working at the Marine Hospital in Key West during the 1930s, claimed his deceased ancestor showed him the face of his one true love in a series of visions. These experiences weren't mere daydreams. They felt like spiritual visitations that gave his life new purpose and direction. This supernatural obsession suddenly became real when he met Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos, a young Cuban-American woman suffering from tuberculosis at the hospital where he worked. He immediately recognized her as the woman from his childhood visions. Carl became convinced that fate had brought them together and that he alone could cure her illness. His belief in their destined connection grew stronger each day. His courtship involved extravagant gifts and unorthodox medical treatments that blurred the line between care and control. He brought her expensive jewelry and medications not available to other patients. He spent hours treating her with experimental radiation therapy at the hospital. Elena, vulnerable and dying, became the focal point of his increasingly grandiose and dangerous fixation. She was a tuberculosis patient with little hope of recovery, yet Carl saw her as his destined partner. Carl's belief that he was destined to save Elena grew stronger even as her health deteriorated rapidly. He ignored medical reality in favor of his spiritual convictions. This initial romantic ideal would soon transform into something far more disturbing as his fixation deepened. The stage was set for a tragedy that would defy all conventional understanding of love and devotion, beginning with those supernatural visions that convinced Carl von Cosel he had found his destined soulmate in the 1930s Key West. How far would you consider going to preserve the memory of someone you loved? When Elena died in 1931, Carl's obsession grew dramatically. He took over the entire funeral arrangements and paid for everything out of his own pocket. This wasn't just a simple burial. He constructed an elaborate above-ground mausoleum in the Key West Cemetery, a permanent monument to his feelings. The tomb he designed included special features that revealed his true intentions. It contained an airtight casket and something far more unusual, an incubator tank filled with formaldehyde solution. This chemical compound was commonly used in embalming during that era to slow decomposition, but his application was anything but standard practice. He was taking preservation to another level entirely. Carl began telling people that Elena's spirit visited him regularly at night. He claimed she spoke and sang to him from beyond the grave, reinforcing his conviction that their bonds surpassed normal human limits. These experiences, whether real to him or imagined, fueled his increasingly odd behavior as he spent countless hours each day at the mausoleum. Neighbors noticed his unusual patterns, the daily visits, the long hours spent alone at the gravesite, but most dismissed it as the eccentric behavior of a grieving man. They saw his actions as strange perhaps, but not alarming. Little did they suspect that this elaborate tomb was merely the beginning of something far more disturbing. How did Carl secretly remove Elena's body from her grave 2 years after her death without anyone noticing? The answer would soon reveal a level of planning and determination that went far beyond mere mourning. His descent into full-blown madness was only just beginning, hidden behind the respectable facade of a devoted admirer honoring his lost love. What pushes a person to cross that final boundary of respect for the dead? 2 years after Elena's passing, Carl returned to the cemetery under the cover of night. He executed a calculated plan to remove her body from the mausoleum he had so carefully built. The operation required both darkness and a complete disregard for the sanctity of her final resting place.
All right, let's get
He
this
brought the
over with.
decaying remains back to his home, where his medical knowledge took a horrifying turn. He used piano wire to hold the body together, a method that shows the disturbing blend of precision and madness guiding his actions. The wire provided structural support where natural tissue had failed, creating a fragile armature for what came next. To address the visible effects of decomposition, Carl replaced deteriorating skin with silk cloth that he soaked in wax. This created a smooth, lifelike surface over areas that had begun to break down. He also installed glass eyes to maintain the appearance of a living gaze. These weren't quick fixes. They were deliberate attempts to reconstruct the woman he remembered. The smell of decay presented another challenge he had to overcome. He used various preserving agents and heavy perfumes to mask the odor that would otherwise reveal his secret. This daily maintenance became part of his routine, a constant effort to keep reality at bay. He wasn't just storing a body, he was creating a permanent place for Elena within his own living space. Why did neighbors become suspicious when Carl started buying women's clothes and large quantities of perfume? These purchases didn't match the behavior of a solitary man. They suggested the presence of another person, or at the very least, an activity that required explanation. He was buying dresses, stockings, and fragrances in amounts that raised questions among local shopkeepers. The line between a grieving admirer and something far more disturbing had been completely erased. His actions went beyond remembrance into the territory of possession and control. He was living with death in a way that defied all social and moral norms, maintaining a relationship that existed only in his mind, sustained by wire, wax, and willpower. How does someone live with death and call it normal? Carl maintained his secret for 7 years, keeping Elena's preserved body in his home. He dressed the remains in women's clothing each day and kept them in his bed. He treated the body as a living companion, speaking to it regularly and maintaining the fiction of their ongoing relationship. His daily purchases raised questions around town. Shopkeepers noticed him buying large amounts of women's perfume and clothing. These weren't occasional buys. They became regular expenses that suggested something unusual was happening behind his closed doors. The perfume served a practical purpose, masking the scent of decay that lingered despite his preservation efforts. A young boy once saw Carl dancing in his window with what appeared to be a life-size doll. The sight seemed strange but not alarming enough to report. Others noticed his increasingly isolated behavior as he devoted himself entirely to this unnatural relationship. He stopped socializing and spent all his time inside the house. He spoke to the body as if holding conversations with a living person. He maintained this fiction day after day, year after year. The community's whispers grew louder as people wondered about the strange doctor living alone with his secrets. Nobody could imagine the truth of what was actually happening inside that house. The carefully constructed facade was about to crumble under the weight of its own impossibility. Elena's sister, growing increasingly suspicious of Carl's behavior and stories, decided to confront him directly. She arrived at his home demanding answers about his relationship with her deceased sister. What shocking discovery did she make when Carl finally revealed his secret? The answer would turn private madness into public spectacle. What happens when suspicion turns to certainty? Elena's sister acted on her growing doubts about Carl's behavior. She went to his home determined to understand what was really happening. She confronted him directly about his relationship with her deceased sister. She demanded honest answers after years of strange stories and odd behavior from the doctor. Carl responded in a way that defied all expectations. He didn't deny anything or make excuses. Instead, he revealed the horrifying truth as if it were perfectly normal. He showed her Elena's preserved body, which he had transformed into a waxen effigy. The sister saw what remained of her sister propped up in Carl's bed, dressed in clothing, with glass eyes staring blankly forward. The discovery violated every possible boundary. It crossed legal, moral, and emotional lines that most people never consider. The sister immediately notified the authorities about what she had found in Carl's home. Police arrived and arrested Carl on charges of grave desecration. They removed Elena's body from the house as evidence. The case presented unique legal questions for the local community. No one had encountered a situation like this before. The legal system had to determine how to handle someone who had committed such an unusual crime. Doctors examined Carl to determine his mental state and capacity. The community struggled to understand how this could have happened in their town. When news of the case spread, something unexpected occurred. People became intensely curious about what Carl had created. Approximately 7,500 people lined up to view Elena's preserved body when officials put it on public display. They waited in long lines to see the evidence of this strange case for themselves. The public viewing became a major event that drew crowds from across the region. A private madness had become a public spectacle that would captivate and horrify an entire region. The case revealed how fascination and revulsion can exist side by side when people encounter something beyond their normal experience. This bizarre situation would soon present even more complex questions about sanity, morality, and the limits of human behavior. Why would thousands of people line up to view a preserved corpse? The case quickly became a media sensation throughout Florida, with newspapers running dramatic headlines about love reaching beyond death. Reporters focused on the strange romance angle rather than the disturbing criminal aspects. They portrayed Carl as a tragic figure, driven by undying devotion rather than a dangerous individual. Surprisingly, many members of the public expressed sympathy for Carl. They saw him as a hopeless romantic who simply loved too much. This public sentiment created a strange divide between legal judgment and popular opinion. People seemed willing to overlook the grave desecration because they found the love story compelling. The public viewing of Elena's body drew approximately 8,500 people to the funeral home. This represented a massive turnout for the small community of Key West. The event became such a significant local occurrence that schools actually dismissed early so children could attend the viewing with their families. Parents brought their children to witness this unusual spectacle. Medical experts examined Carl and declared him legally sane. They determined he understood the nature of his actions and could distinguish right from wrong. Because of this finding, the charges against him were eventually dropped. The legal system had no precedent for handling such an unusual case involving grave desecration motivated by what some saw as love. This public fascination existed alongside clear ethical concerns about the situation. People felt both drawn to the story and disturbed by its implications. Carl requested that Elena's body be returned to him, but authorities denied this request. They arranged for her to be buried in a secret, unmarked grave to prevent any further disturbance. In a final act of defiance, Carl bombed the original mausoleum where Elena had been interred. He used dynamite to destroy the structure, protesting what he saw as the destruction of her resting place. This violent action showed his ongoing refusal to accept the reality of the situation or the legal consequences of his behavior. The entire case revealed how society struggles with complex questions about death, love, and acceptable behavior. People found themselves simultaneously horrified by Carl's actions and fascinated by his motivation. This paradox continues to challenge our understanding of where normal devotion ends and dangerous obsession begins. Carl Tanzler's story shows how romantic ideals can shift into disturbing obsession. It makes us consider where love becomes control and care turns into possession. Modern psychology suggests such behavior often stems from complex mental health conditions that remain misunderstood. True crime's enduring appeal reflects our need to understand human darkness from a safe distance. This case continues to challenge our views on psychological boundaries and the limits we place on life and death. It reminds us that understanding mental health remains crucial for recognizing when devotion crosses into danger.